chandelier above the Ogidi dining table cast soft golden shadows over the silent family. The table was filled with steaming jollof rice, grilled prawns, and peppered goat meat. But Teyana couldn't taste a thing. Her fork grazed the porcelain plate, untouched. Her father's voice cut through the silence like a machete in tall grass. "You will marry Chief Obi. That's final." Teyana blinked. She had heard him, but her brain refused to process the words. "Excuse me?" she whispered. Chief Gregory Ogidi didn't flinch. "I said you're marrying Chief Obi in 3 months." Her mother, seated at the far end of the table, looked down at her plate, chewing slowly, as though the stew on her spoon held answers she didn't dare say aloud. Teyana's fingers gripped the edge of the chair. He's 50, Daddy. I'm 22, Teyana said, barely managing to finish her sentence. Her father raised a brow. "He's never been married. He's clean. He's a good man. What else do you want?" Teyana's voice cracked. "I want to finish my master's. I want to fall in love. I want to choose who I marry." Gregory Ogidi slammed his palm against the table, causing the cutlery to rattle. "This is not a fantasy, Teyana. We are drowning. You think I enjoy this? You think I don't know what this is costing you? But if this marriage doesn't happen, the company, our name, everything will go under." "But what about me?" she whispered, standing now. "What about my name, my life?" "You're my only child," he said coldly, "and I'm not letting you run around like a selfish girl while this family crumbles. You either marry Chief Obi or you walk out of this house and never return." Silence. Teyana's heart pounded in her ears. Her gaze darted toward her mother. "Mom," she whispered. Amaka Ogidi dabbed her mouth with a napkin, still avoiding her daughter's eyes. "Your father is only doing what he must," she said quietly. "Chief Obi is kind, he's respected, and he'll treat you well." That was it. No comfort, no rebellion, no rescue. Teyana felt her stomach twist. Her whole world, her dreams, her body, her voice, was being handed off like a business asset. That night she lay in her room, staring at the ceiling as silent tears ran down her cheeks. The breeze coming through the window did little to soothe her. She remembered the first time she met Chief Obi, tall, soft-spoken, with gentle eyes and a voice that always sounded like he was telling a story. He had treated her like a niece, gave her books, asked about her thesis. And now he'd be her husband. She thought about escaping, about running off to school without telling anyone. But the reality crashed in. She wasn't just anyone. Her family's name was everywhere. Her life was watched. There would be no escape, no night, no fairy tale. The next weeks passed in a blur of chaos she didn't ask for. Dresses, venues, food tastings, makeup trials. Teyana barely spoke. Her mother handled every detail. "People will talk if you look too miserable," her mother had warned. "Just smile, Teyana. It'll all be over soon." So she smiled. At wedding planners, at makeup artists, at photographers. She posed with Chief Obi for pre-wedding shoots, dressed in flowing aso-oke and lace. The hum of wedding chaos vibrated through the Ogidi mansion. Stylists raced through corridors. Tailors made last-minute adjustments, and distant laughter spilled from the main hallway. But inside her private suite, Teyana sat quietly in front of a mirror, unmoving, her expression hollow. She looked like royalty. A hand-beaded ivory mermaid gown hugged her curves. Her makeup was flawless, skin glowing with soft highlights. A tiara shimmered in her natural updo. Yet she felt like a painted prisoner. Her fingers trembled as she clutched the gold bouquet. Her chest tightened. She wanted to scream, to run, to cry, but none of that would change the truth. Today she was marrying a man nearly 30 years older than her, and no one cared how much it was killing her inside. The door opened. Her mother stepped in, already dressed in her glittering purple lace. "You're not even smiling," she scolded gently. Teyana turned slowly. "Why would I?" "Because the entire country is watching. Because everything is ready. Because your father has sacrificed everything to make this day possible." Teyana stood. the dress heavy on her body like chains. Everything except my happiness. Her mother's eyes flickered. Sometimes we do what we must, not what we want. You'll learn that soon. With that, she stepped aside. It's time. The cathedral smelled of roses and incense. A choir hummed softly as high-profile guests filled the pews. Business moguls, senators, press. The nation was watching. Teyana stepped onto the red carpet, arm locked with her father's. Her face was powdered perfection, her posture regal. But her hands were ice cold. Chief Obi stood waiting at the altar in a champagne agbada with gold embroidery. He smiled as she approached, his eyes filled with something close to reverence. She barely saw him. She barely saw anything. The priest spoke, but the words blurred. Do you, Chief Obi, take Teyana Ogidi to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do, he said confidently. And do you, Teyana? I do, she said softly, not even waiting for him to finish. There was a beat of awkward silence, but the ceremony continued. Rings were exchanged. They were declared husband and wife. Polite applause filled the room. When Chief Obi leaned forward to kiss her, she tilted her head slightly. He kissed her cheek, tender and unforced. The cameras clicked. The world saw elegance. But only Teyana knew it was a funeral for her dreams. The reception hall glittered under crystal chandeliers. Gold accents adorned every table, and a live band serenaded the elite. The event was being live-streamed across national media. Social media buzzed with envy. #TeyanaOgidi 2025 was trending. She smiled on cue. She danced when told. She cut the cake, toasted with wine, posed with strangers. Everyone praised her grace. But no one noticed the sadness in her eyes. Your gown is everything, one guest gushed. Teyana nodded. Thank you. My mother picked it. You're such a lucky bride. He'll treat you like a queen. Lucky? She wanted to disappear. Later that night, they arrived at the honeymoon suite of Lagos's most luxurious hotel. A chilled bottle of champagne stood on the table. Rose petals led from the door to the bed. Every corner whispered romance. But Teyana felt none of it. She walked straight to the bathroom and changed into a satin robe, careful not to smudge her makeup. She stared at herself in the mirror, this time without a tiara. Just Teyana, and she didn't recognize the woman looking back. When she returned to the room, Chief Obi was sitting on the edge of the bed, having removed his agbada. He stood slowly. You look breathtaking. She walked past him. I'm tired. I understand, he said gently. It's been a long day. She sat on the bed, her robe tightly wrapped around her. There was a long silence. Then he spoke again. Teyana, I want you to know something. She looked up. I didn't marry you to own you, or to force anything. Her brow furrowed slightly. I know this wasn't your plan, he continued. I know you didn't want me. You didn't choose me, and I don't blame you. But I've watched you grow from a girl into a woman, and I admire everything about you. He took a breath. I hope someday you'll come to like me, maybe even love me. But until then, he motioned to the couch. I'll be sleeping there. She blinked. You're not expecting anything? She asked slowly. He smiled, sad and sincere. Not tonight, not ever, unless you want it. For the first time that day, her walls cracked just a little. She didn't reply, just stared at him, unsure of how to feel. He nodded, walked to the couch, grabbed a throw pillow, and lay down fully clothed. She turned off the bedside lamp, plunging the room into darkness. Lying in bed alone, she whispered to the ceiling, I don't hate him. She wasn't sure if she meant it, but she knew one thing. She didn't love him either. The sound of the morning birds was soft, almost gentle, as a light streamed through the cream-colored curtains of the presidential suite. Teyana stirred beneath the covers, momentarily disoriented. For a brief second, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered. She turned slowly, her eyes drifting to the empty side of the bed. Chief Obi had kept his word. He hadn't touched her, not even a whisper of pressure. She hadn't cried last night, but she had stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering how she got here, and why she felt like she was trapped inside a perfect prison. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, and padded barefoot into the sitting room. And Chief Obi was gone. A handwritten note sat on the polished wooden table beside a breakfast tray. Had an early meeting with the commissioner. Didn't want to wake you. You look peaceful. Rest today. You've earned it. Obi. She read the note twice before folding it in half. There was kindness in his words, a man trying to win her heart by offering patience instead of pressure. But the emptiness inside her didn't shrink. She hadn't chosen this life. For the next week, they fell into a strange rhythm. Breakfasts were quiet. He asked about her thesis, her opinions on business strategies, and offered her space when she withdrew. No affection, no expectations, just gentle respect and awkward silence. He attended endless meetings while she appeared beside him at social events. Gala openings, press interviews, a charity fundraiser. All Lagos watched the beautiful young bride of one of the city's wealthiest tycoons, never guessing how hollow she felt inside. She wore her gowns like armor. She smiled like she rehearsed. And every night they returned to their suite. He took the couch, she took the bed, and nothing more was said. Then came the call. It was late morning. Teyana sat by the pool at the estate, flipping through a tech magazine, when the housekeeper rushed out, her face pale. Ma, it's Chief. His jet. There's been an accident. The magazine slipped from her hands. What? The private jet. It went down. Teyana stood so fast her chair toppled backward. No, she whispered. No, no. She didn't feel her legs moving. She didn't hear herself screaming. Everything blurred into sirens of disbelief and dread. Her phone rang endlessly. Her father, journalists, business partners. Rumors circulated wildly. She collapsed onto the living room couch, watching the news on mute. Breaking, Chief Obi confirmed dead in private jet crash near Enugu. Investigation ongoing. Black box not yet recovered. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought the floor was shaking. A part of her wanted to deny it, wanted to believe it was a mix-up. But then the estate manager confirmed it. The jet was his. He didn't survive. By evening, Teyana sat in silence in her private lounge as condolences poured in. Her mother arrived with tears, wrapping her arms around her. I'm so sorry, baby, she cried. Teyana didn't move. She felt nothing, just cold and quiet, and strangely, guilty. He didn't deserve that, she said eventually. No, he didn't, her mother replied, brushing back her daughter's hair. And you didn't deserve this either. 2 days later, the will was read. Teyana sat in a room full of lawyers and business heads in a high-rise office overlooking the ocean. She barely heard half of what they said. As stated clearly in his final will and testament, Chief Obi has left the entirety of his estate to his legal spouse, Mrs. Teyana Ogidi Obi. This includes Obi Tech Group, 6 international properties, personal accounts, vehicles, and private investments. Gasps echoed across the room. One of the senior board members shook his head in disbelief. Her father's eyes widened. Teyana blinked. What? He left you everything, Ma, the attorney said again gently. Everything? She repeated. Everything. She had entered this marriage with nothing but resentment and fear. And now, 7 days later, she had inherited a billionaire empire. She was 22, a widow, and now one of the wealthiest women in Nigeria. That night, she returned to the same bed they had shared once. The room smelled like jasmine and aged wood. She sat on the edge of the mattress in silence, his handwritten note still on the nightstand. She unfolded it again, even though she'd memorized the words. You look peaceful. Rest today. You've earned it. She hadn't even said goodbye. She hadn't even told him thank you. She felt the tears well for the first time, but she didn't let them fall. She wouldn't break. Not yet. Not in this room. Not when the world already believed she had won some grand prize. They didn't know what it cost her. The media frenzy was merciless. Headlines read, "Heiress at 22, Teyana Ogidi becomes Africa's youngest billionaire widow." From bride to boss, the stunning rise of Teyana Ogidi. They made it sound romantic. But no one knew the truth. They didn't know she had begged her father to let her go. They didn't know Chief Ogidi never touched her, never demanded her body, never once disrespected her spirit. They didn't know she had just started to see the man behind the deal. And now he was gone. At the funeral, the world came to mourn. The service was televised. His business partners praised him. Politicians offered glowing tributes. Teyana wore black silk, her veil pulled low over her face. She stood tall, quiet, graceful, and numb. When the casket was lowered, she whispered to the wind, "I'm sorry." She didn't know if it was for not loving him, or for taking so long to see his heart. That evening, as the estate emptied and the crowd disappeared, she sat alone in the garden. The sun was dipping behind the palms. The world was moving on. But she was still here, a widow at 22, alone, and dangerously powerful. At 23, Teyana Ogidi no longer wore white lace or nervous smiles. She wore high-waisted pantsuits in ivory and charcoal, soft silk blouses with golden buttons, and heels that echoed through the marble corridors of Obitech like a quiet warning. The boss is here. She sat at the head of the conference room every Monday morning, surrounded by men who had underestimated her. Not anymore. Teyana had transformed Obitech from a stagnant legacy firm into a rising star in Nigeria's digital innovation sector. She rolled out new cybersecurity services, brought in international consultants, and slashed deadweight departments with surgical precision. Within months, profits rose, investors returned. Tech bloggers called her the Black Ice Queen of Banana Island. They thought they were mocking her. She wore it like a crown. She lived alone in the estate Chief Ogidi left behind, modern, cold, beautiful, just like the image she projected. Most days, she barely remembered she had ever been married. She barely remembered being 22 and terrified. Now power was her armor. Routine was her safety net. Every morning, black coffee, BBC News, review forecasts, meetings, strategy, security checks, and silence. Her phone buzzed constantly, but her heart never did. She'd deleted dating apps, blocked admirers, and trained her bodyguards to filter out charmers and opportunists. She wasn't looking for love, because love came with lies, and she'd already learned what lies could cost. His name was Sei, a charming, British-educated business consultant who caught her attention at a fintech summit in Abuja. He had a clean accent, striking dimples, and the quiet confidence of a man used to getting what he wanted. At first, she ignored his attempts. But he didn't give up. He sent books she'd mentioned in panels, showed up at galas she was hosting, shared ideas she found sharp, authentic. And then one night, after a business dinner at her favorite restaurant, she let herself laugh with him. That was his opening. Within a month, they were having late-night calls. Within 2, he was flying to Lagos every other weekend. And by the 3rd month, he slipped a velvet box onto her marble counter. "Not a ring," he said quickly, "just a token, something small, to say, I want more with you." She opened it, a Cartier bracelet. She didn't know why, but her stomach twisted. Still, she smiled. "It's beautiful." But something about his eyes felt performative. The next week, she invited him over again, but this time her private security team was already watching. "Ma," her chief of staff whispered discreetly, "we found some flagged activity. He's been messaging a woman in Ibadan. He called her his real ride or die. And she's pregnant." Teyana's heart dropped. "How far along?" 6 months. He's been telling her he's working a deal to change their life." She didn't cry. She didn't confront him. Instead, she made him breakfast. Smiling sweetly, she asked about his business ideas. Then, when he brought up the $100 million investment he needed for a life-changing project in South Africa, she leaned forward and said, "Would you like to run that idea by my legal team?" He froze. "What? Oh, You didn't think I'd write a check just because you kissed me under fairy lights, did you? His lips parted, stunned. She stood. You should leave, before I let security show you just how much I hate liars. As he was escorted out, she closed her eyes and whispered to herself, never again. But the universe wasn't done testing her. 2 months later, there was Chuka, a tall, dark-skinned, poetry-spouting architect she met through her cousin. He was different, or so she thought. Soft-spoken, patient, he never asked for anything. Until one night at a private dinner on her rooftop, he poured her wine from a bottle he'd brought just for her. She lifted the glass. It sparkled red under the candlelight. Then something stopped her. She'd learned to trust her instincts. So she smiled at him and said, "Why don't you take the first sip?" He hesitated. "Oh, I don't drink red." "But you said this was your favorite." "I meant the brand, not the grape." "Take a sip, Chuka." He laughed nervously. "Teyana, I wouldn't insult you." "Security," she called calmly. Her men stepped forward immediately. Chuka panicked. "Teyana, baby, it's not. Get him out." The next day, the wine was tested. Traces of benzodiazepine. She sat on her balcony that morning, watching the city, her expression like glass, clear, cold, and sharp. That was when she made a decision. She wouldn't love again. Not until someone proved they were worth the risk. And she didn't think that man existed. But with each betrayal, she grew. She became sharper, built firewalls around her bank accounts, her heart, her time. She started walking into rooms like thunder, still but impossible to ignore. Men feared her, women admired her. Some envied her. She heard the whispers. She's heartless. She's too cold. She must be cursed. Let them talk. She had an empire to run. One morning as she sat in her office reviewing merger proposals, her CFO knocked and stepped in nervously. "There's a request for a private partnership meeting, Ma, from Khalifa Tech Group." She looked up. "That's Raymond Khalifa's company." "Yes, Ma. Their CEO would like to schedule an in-person strategy session." Her brows lifted slightly. "I thought Raymond was based in Dubai." "He's flying in next week. He asked specifically to meet you in person." Teyana nodded once. "Fine. Book it." As her assistant left, she leaned back in her chair. Raymond Khalifa. She had heard the rumors. Ruthless, silent, filthy rich, untouchable. Just like her. She smirked. Let's see who gets to outplay the other first. The boardroom at Obi Tech was clinically sleek. Chrome fixtures, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Lagos skyline, and a long mahogany table polished to perfection. But on this particular morning, the air buzzed with something far less sterile. Anticipation. Teyana sat at the head of the table, her navy silk blouse unwrinkled, her heels crossed neatly at the ankle. Her face, as always, was unreadable. Around her, department heads adjusted their ties and murmured about Khalifa Tech, international expansion, and his reputation. She wasn't listening. She was waiting. Then the glass door opened, and the room went silent. He didn't need an introduction. Raymond Khalifa walked in like he owned the air people breathed. Black tailored suit, no tie, an open collar framing a throat that looked like it had whispered and commanded in equal parts. He was tall, toned, dark-skinned, dangerous in the way storms were dangerous, beautiful, loud, and impossible to ignore. Teyana's eyes met his, and something shifted. She had expected power. She hadn't expected it to look like him. "Miss Ogidi," he said, voice like aged whiskey. "A pleasure." Her handshake was firm. "Mr. Khalifa." "Please," he smiled, lowering himself into the seat beside hers. "Call me Raymond." She didn't smile. "Only if you call me Teyana." A flicker of amusement passed through his eyes. "I like that." The meeting began. But neither of them were really paying attention. As the head of strategy broke down partnership numbers and market projections, Raymond kept his eyes on her. Occasionally, he'd glance at her notes, her fingers, her lips. And she noticed. Teyana ignored him, mostly. until she didn't. "You seem distracted," she said coolly during a lull. He chuckled. "You don't believe in warming up, do you? Not in rooms filled with men who want to be me or ruin me." His gaze sharpened. "I don't want either." "No?" she asked, lifting a brow. He leaned in slightly. "I want to build with you." Their eyes locked. Long, heavy, loaded. Someone cleared their throat. The assistant continued the slide deck, but the room had already changed. After the meeting, Raymond requested a brief one-on-one. Her team hesitated, but Teyana waved them off. They stepped out onto the private balcony overlooking Victoria Island. The breeze caught her silk blouse, and for a moment she looked like art. Raymond rested both hands on the railing, glancing sideways. "You're exactly what they said you were," he said. She sipped her lemon water. "Which part?" "Cold, brilliant, unreachable." She turned to him. "Do I disappoint?" He chuckled softly. "No, you fascinate." Teyana tilted her head. "I've heard that before." "I mean it. Everyone means it. Until they don't." Silence. Then Raymond said, "I watched your wedding." She stiffened. "I didn't know you back then," he continued quickly. "But it was streamed everywhere. And when he died, you vanished." "I didn't vanish," she said. "I rebuilt, quietly." Raymond nodded. "And perfectly." She looked at him then. Really looked. "Is this why you came? To play this game?" "No," he replied. "I came for business. And the rest," he held her gaze. "The rest surprised me." That evening, she received flowers. No note, just a vase of blood-red orchids with gold-trimmed petals. Exotic, unapologetically bold. She didn't smile. But she didn't throw them out either. Over the next few weeks, Raymond didn't chase. He lingered. A message here, a delayed compliment there. He didn't pressure, didn't flirt too, obviously. He treated her like a mind, not a prize. It confused her. No man had ever played the long game, and she didn't know whether to admire it or fear it. At a gala dinner hosted by a mutual investor, they sat on the same table. Their conversation flowed easily. Books, business, bad press. He laughed easily, but his eyes were sharp. He didn't drink, he listened, he studied. She was used to men who pursued. Raymond was simply present. And somehow that was worse. It made her guard rise. After the gala, he walked her to her car. He didn't touch her, didn't even ask for her number. He just said, "You're not like anyone I've ever met." She replied, "That's the point." Then she got into the car and left. But her heart was still sitting on that pavement. 2 nights later, she couldn't sleep. She sat on her penthouse balcony in an oversized shirt and nothing else. Feet curled beneath her, city lights blinking far below. Her phone buzzed. "Raymond, did you always know you'd be this powerful?" She stared at the message, then replied, "Teyana, no, I just knew I'd never let anyone own me again." 3 dots appeared, paused, and disappeared. She stared at the screen until the sun rose. Teyana stepped into the Khalifa Tech headquarters like a queen walking into a lion's den, unbothered, unreadable, and entirely in control. She wore a sharp white power suit that hugged her figure like custom armor, paired with stiletto heels and bold red lips. The security team opened the glass doors for her, but she barely noticed. All she could think about was the man behind this empire. Raymond Khalifa. Every article had a different version of him: the merciless venture capitalist, the mysterious Dubai tycoon, the devil in a suit. But only Teyana had seen him smile like a boy and listen like a man who cared. And that was dangerous. He greeted her in the private penthouse lounge of the building. The view was breathtaking. Lagos glimmering under a soft haze, boats slicing through the Atlantic below. "Teyana," he said, voice smooth, "you look like you walked out of a Forbes cover." She dropped her file on the table. "I don't need flattery. Let's talk business." "Always," he said, eyes twinkling. But his smile lingered a second too long. She sat, crossed her legs, and flipped open the proposal. You want a merger with Obitech's payment infrastructure. I want a partnership, he corrected, built on mutual interest, not acquisition. Teyana studied him. You're not used to hearing no. No, he agreed. But I like the challenge. They spent the next hour going over figures, projections, and integration timelines. The conversation was flawless, effortless synergy between two brilliant minds who had clawed their way to the top. But beneath the sharp dialogue, something unspoken buzzed in the air. A flicker in his eyes when she leaned forward, a tilt of her head when he spoke low. A silence that held more weight than any sentence. She stood to leave. He followed her to the elevator. Dinner? He asked casually. I don't mix personal with professional, she replied. He smirked. That's funny, because I already feel like I know the woman behind the queen. She turned, lifting her chin. You don't. He stepped closer, not touching her, just close enough to tilt the balance of power. Not yet. The elevator opened. She stepped in without looking back. But her pulse was anything but steady. That night, she tossed and turned in her penthouse suite. Raymond was in her head. Not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't say. He didn't ask for anything. Didn't flirt excessively. Didn't try to charm her like the others. He was patient, calculated. Too calculated. The devil didn't come with horns anymore. He came in custom suits and whispered partnerships. She didn't know if she wanted to run away from him or run toward him. The next few weeks were a dance. Raymond invited her to exclusive industry talks, business retreats, and strategy briefings. She said no, then yes, then no again. Each time he respected it. And that made him all the more addictive. One night he invited her to a private art auction hosted in an old colonial mansion in Ikoyi. She wore a velvet black gown with a plunging neckline and her hair swept up like a goddess. He wore a simple tux, no tie, top buttons undone. They barely spoke for the first half of the night, but their glances across the room said enough. At one point, she passed him near the wine bar. He leaned in. Annie, you're still pretending you're not intrigued. She took a slow sip from her glass. And you're still pretending this is only business. Outside, they stood under the moonlight beside her car. The music from the mansion drifted faintly behind them. I know your type, she said finally. Oh? He asked, amused. You wait. You listen. You get inside people's heads. I thought you liked intelligent men. I like honest men. He stepped closer. Then let's be honest. You think I'm dangerous. She didn't move. You are. I think you're dangerous too. A beat passed. He looked down at her lips, then back to her eyes. I'm not going to kiss you, he said softly. Not until you want me to. She stared at him, breath shallow. Because when I do, it won't be a game. He stepped away and left her standing there, burning. 2 days later, she got a delivery. A rare first edition copy of a business book she mentioned in passing at a conference. No note. Just a small gold sticker on the back that read, I listen. She didn't know whether to smile or scream. Her assistant knocked mid-afternoon. Ma, there's a message from Mr. Khalifa. Teyana waved her in. He said you're playing chess, but he plays in dimensions. Teyana's eyes narrowed. Send him this response, she said with a sly grin. Tell him I invented the damn board. Teyana was not used to silence feeling this loud. She sat by the tall glass windows in her penthouse, a golden robe draped around her shoulders, legs curled underneath her. Below her, Lagos pulsed, cars weaving, sirens in the distance, life roaring in fast motion. Inside her, everything slowed. It had been 3 days since Raymond sent that last message. You're playing chess, but I play in dimensions. She'd sent her reply, bold, confident, dismissive. I invented the damn board. He hadn't answered. And somehow, that was worse than any reply. In the office, her focus fractured. Her assistant noticed it first. Ma, you're reviewing the same email for the fourth time. She blinked. Am I? Even her staff, loyal, hardened professionals, walked softer around her. That night, she skipped dinner for the first time in months. Her bodyguards waited by the car after a late client meeting, but she waved them off. I'll walk the last 2 blocks. Ma, that's not protocol. She didn't wait. She needed air. But more than that, she needed clarity. Her heels echoed against the pavement as she walked the dimly lit street near her apartment. She paused near a closed bookstore, the scent of old pages drifting from a half-open vent. That was when she felt the shift in the air. She turned. He was leaning against a parked car. Raymond. No suit this time, just a black turtleneck, slacks, and that same unbothered stillness that unnerved her. What are you doing here? She asked, her voice quieter than intended. You said you invented the board, he replied. I wanted to see the inventor in her natural habitat. She didn't know whether to laugh or slap him. Instead, she crossed her arms. Are you stalking me now? No, he said, taking slow steps toward her. I was hoping you'd let me walk you home. I don't need protection. I know. I came for proximity, not permission. She inhaled slowly. You make everything sound like a riddle. That's because you make everything feel like a test. They stood inches apart, the city humming around them. And for once, she didn't want to win the conversation. She just wanted it to last. Back in her apartment, she poured them both tea instead of wine. Raymond walked through the space like he'd been there in a dream. This place is precise, like you. Meaning cold, meaning curated. Nothing here is by accident. She leaned against the kitchen counter. And yours? Let me guess. Moody art, books you've never finished, a whiskey cart you don't use. Almost accurate, he said with a grin. Except I finished the books. They sipped in silence. Then he set his cup down. Why don't you trust me? She didn't answer immediately. I've given you space, he continued. I haven't pushed, haven't asked for anything. That's the problem, she said. He tilted his head. Explain. She met his eyes. You don't want my money. You don't want the brand. You don't need my network. And that terrifies me. Because? Because it means you might actually want me. And that's not safe. He said nothing for a moment. Then, you've been hunted for years. I get it. Her throat tightened. I read every article, he added softly. The poisoned wine, the stolen investments, the fake friends, and still, you're here, breathing, building, commanding. Teyana sat slowly, setting down her cup. Why are you really here? She whispered. He stepped closer. I'm here because every time I walk into a room, I want you in it. Not as a trophy, not as a name, but because I like the way your mind slices through noise. I like how you scare weak men, and I like that I have no idea what you'll say next. She looked up, and in that moment, something in her cracked. I don't want to fall for someone who's temporary, she said, voice barely audible. I can't survive that again. I'm not temporary, he replied. She swallowed. You all say that. He moved closer, kneeling in front of her, not to propose, not to beg, just to be level with her. I don't want to be worshipped, he said. I want to be chosen. Her hand hovered above his. Then, hesitantly, she placed her fingers in his. She didn't kiss him. He didn't try. They just sat there in the quiet. Two powerful people, finally unmasked. Over the following weeks, their connection deepened, but cautiously. They attended summits together, hosted panels as co-speakers. She began letting him into her routines, her early morning workout sessions, her weekend museum visits, even her late-night phone calls when anxiety pressed too hard against her ribcage. But still, she held a piece of herself back. One evening, as they strolled through an art gallery showcasing modern African sculptors, he asked gently, Do you ever think of him? She paused, Chief Obi? He nodded. She touched a sculpture absently, black marble shaped like a woman with wings. Sometimes, he didn't deserve the way he died. Raymond stepped beside her. I think he would have been proud of the woman you've become. I hope so, she said. They continued walking, but a heaviness lingered in the air. She wasn't broken, but she was still healing. One night during a private business retreat in Seychelles, they sat on a rooftop under the stars. She wore a soft white linen dress, curls loose around her face. He lay back on a blanket, looking up at the sky. Teyana, he said, voice low. Yes? Say something vulnerable. She hesitated, then whispered, I don't know how to need people without hating myself for it. Raymond didn't move, didn't flinch. He simply reached over and held her hand. No pressure, just presence. And that night when she lay beside him, fully clothed, heart racing, she didn't feel caged. She felt seen. It started with a whisper of scent, vetiver and old wood polish. Teyana walked into the room and froze. It was Chief Obi's old study. She hadn't stepped inside it since his burial. The door had remained closed, the keys untouched. But today something inside her pulled her to it, as though his memory had finally grown too loud to ignore. The room was dim, dust floating lazily in the afternoon light. Books lined the mahogany shelves. Papers were still stacked neatly on his desk. His glasses lay folded beside an unopened letter. Teyana stepped in carefully, like she was trespassing. And maybe she was. Not on property, but on grief. She sat behind the desk, her fingers brushing the leather chair. The silence wrapped around her tightly, not cruel but honest. She had never cried for him. Not at the funeral. Not when the will was read. Not even when the media dragged her name through headlines and hashtags. But now, in this room that smelled like him, she remembered. The way he had looked at her on their wedding day, hopeful, not possessive. The way he had given her space, without demand. The way he had waited, and died waiting. Teyana buried her face in her hands and sobbed, not out of guilt, not entirely, but for the love that could have grown, if life had been kinder, if time had waited. That evening, she didn't go to the office. She didn't take calls. She didn't touch her laptop. Instead, she sent Raymond a single message. I want to show you something. They drove out just before sunset, the sky painted in lavender and peach. Raymond didn't ask questions. When they arrived at the estate, she led him inside in silence, past the grand hall, through the private wing, and into the quiet study. She stood beside the desk. This was his favorite room, she said. Raymond scanned the space. Chief Obi? She nodded. I avoided it for years, pretended it didn't matter. But today, her voice caught. He walked to her, gently. She didn't stop him. I never loved him, she said softly. Not the way a wife should. I didn't get the chance. Raymond's eyes didn't move from hers. He knew. Her brows furrowed. What? He was a smart man, and from everything I've seen, he loved you enough not to demand what you couldn't give. She nodded, tears burning again. I was cold, she whispered. No, you were wounded, he replied, and he gave you safety. Teyana wrapped her arms around herself. I don't know how to honor his memory and still move forward. You just did, Raymond said. You let me in. She looked up. And for the first time since they met, she felt her grief being held. Not solved, not silenced, but honored. They sat in the study for hours. She told him about the wedding, how surreal it felt, how numb she was. She described the wedding night, the untouched bed, the way he'd whispered, I'll wait. Raymond never interrupted. He just listened, not as a rival, but as a witness. Later that night, they walked through the garden. The scent of jasmine trailed them. The moon was a soft silver above. I was 17 when I lost my mother, Raymond said. Teyana glanced at him. She worked 3 jobs. My father vanished after I turned 5. We had nothing. When she died, I promised myself I'd build something that no one could take from me. She didn't speak, just listened. I built Khalifa Tech with rage, with grief, with hunger. But I didn't build it with love. They stopped under a tree heavy with white blossoms. I didn't think I could feel again. Not really, he added. And now? He looked at her, and everything in his eyes softened. Now I'm scared. Of me? She asked, almost teasing. Of what it means to want you, not as a conquest, but as a choice. Her heart pounded. I want to give you peace, he said, but I won't pretend I don't want your heart. She stepped closer. And if I can't give it fully yet, then I'll wait. The words settled between them. The same words Chief Obi had once said. But this time it didn't feel like duty. It felt like love. Back inside, they didn't kiss. They did undress. They lay on the couch, her head on his chest, his hands stroking her curls. And for the first time in years, Teyana slept without tension in her spine. The next morning, she walked into her office with a new aura. Her staff noticed it immediately. Not softer, not weaker, but free. Later that day, she called a board meeting. She outlined a new initiative, the Obi Foundation for Young Women in Tech. It's time we use our power for more than expansion, she said. It's time we create legacy. The board members nodded, some even applauding. But only Raymond knew what it cost her to say it out loud, and what it meant to finally let go. The alarm shattered the night like a scream. Teyana shot up in bed, her silk robe clinging to her as red emergency lights blinked across the mansion walls. Footsteps thundered downstairs. She could hear security yelling through their radios. A break-in! She grabbed her phone, hands trembling. As she dialed the head of security, her heart pounded like war drums in her chest. Ma! A voice crackled. Someone scaled the back fence. We've contained the perimeter, but you need to stay inside. A knock interrupted the call. Soft, urgent. She turned toward the door. And there he was, Raymond. No security badge, no bodyguard, just him, breathless, eyes wild. I was at the next building over, he said. I heard. I ran. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She stepped into his arms like she'd been doing it in her dreams for years. He held her tightly, one hand on the back of her head, the other gripping her waist like he needed her just as badly as she needed him. I'm okay, she whispered. I know, he replied, but I needed to see for myself. They sat together on the couch in the dark, the red lights finally silenced, the air still heavy with the residue of fear. Raymond draped a blanket over her shoulders. She didn't let go of his hand. I've never felt this vulnerable, she admitted quietly, even when the men tried to poison me, even when I caught that consultant with his pregnant fiancée. Because this wasn't about business, he said softly. It was about safety. She nodded. And you came, she added, before even the guards did. He didn't answer. He just watched her. And slowly she reached into the drawer beside her and pulled out a small silver key. What's this? He asked. A key to the side entrance. No one else has one. His eyes met hers. This isn't a test, she said. It's trust. He didn't take it right away. Instead, he cupped her face gently. You're letting me in? I already did. And she placed the key in his palm. Not as a prize, as a promise. From then on, something shifted. They didn't make grand declarations. There were no social media announcements or interviews. Just stolen glances. Quiet dinners on private beaches. Early morning phone calls where no one said anything, but both smiled into the silence. Business trips to Johannesburg and Cairo, where meetings ended early and love started late. She laughed more now, softer. He worked less when she was around. And on nights when the world felt too loud, they sat on rooftops and counted planes instead of stars. But power doesn't sleep, and enemies never forget. It happened on a Wednesday. A package arrived at Teyana's office with no return label. Inside photos. Dozens of them. Private moments between her and Raymond. Her in her robe, him entering her penthouse. Them laughing, touching, breathing. And a note. He's not who you think he is. Attached was a single contract, a transaction showing Raymond's ex-associate once proposed a hostile takeover of Obitech. She stared at it for a long time. Then she picked up her phone. "I thought this might happen," Raymond said calmly when she showed him everything that evening. "You didn't warn me," she replied, voice tight. "I didn't think he'd go this far." "He said you were part of it," she said. "Do you believe him?" Teyana looked up, and for a terrifying moment, she didn't know. Raymond stepped forward. "Teyana, I've made mistakes, but using you? Never. I came into your world because I respected your mind. I stayed because I fell for your soul." She didn't speak. He exhaled. "Tell me what you want me to do." She stared at the photos again, and then calmly, coldly, handed him back the folder. "Nothing." "What?" "I'll handle it." The next morning, her legal team filed a privacy violation suit. Her cybersecurity division traced the leak. Within 48 hours, they shut down the ex-associate's shell company, exposed 3 years of fraud, and leaked it, anonymously, to international press. By Friday, the man's reputation was ashes. And Teyana? She didn't flinch once. Later that night, Raymond sat across from her in silence. "You didn't hesitate," he said finally. She sipped her wine. "I've learned not to." He leaned back. "That was terrifying." "I know. But also," he smiled slowly, "incredibly sexy." She laughed for the first time in days. "Now you know," she said. "I'm not just beautiful. I'm lethal." He leaned in. "And I'm yours." She didn't need roses. She didn't need poetry. Just those words, spoken with certainty. And when he kissed her that night, it wasn't gentle. It was earned. The ballroom at the Cape Town Tech Summit shimmered with glass chandeliers, opal flooring, and the muted murmur of power. CEOs from across Africa gathered beneath golden lights, dressed in bespoke suits and gowns worth millions, hungry for influence, thirsty for attention. Teyana stood at the center of it all, radiant in a satin emerald gown that clung to her body like a second skin. She was a vision of strength. Her hair was swept into a clean bun, bold earrings kissed her neck, and her eyes, sharp, lined, commanding, didn't need a crown. She was the crown. Reporters whispered her name. The heiress of Obitech, the queen who never fell, the ice empress who melted for no one until him. And he was there. Raymond. Black tux, no tie, simple, stunning. He stood off to the side, watching her speak on stage, hands folded behind his back. His eyes never left her. Because today wasn't about dominance. It was about devotion. When the summit ended and the applause faded, the lights dimmed and the cameras lowered. Teyana walked off the stage and directly into Raymond's waiting arms. He didn't care that hundreds were watching. He held her like he'd waited a lifetime. She leaned in and whispered, "Did I do okay?" He smiled. "You silenced lions." They stepped out onto the terrace as the sun began to set. A sea breeze danced through the air, carrying the scent of champagne, salt, and jasmine. She stared at the horizon. "I never thought I'd be here." Raymond leaned against the marble railing. "Where?" "Free, powerful, loved." He didn't reply immediately. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. She froze. He didn't go down on one knee. He didn't need to. "This is not a proposal of possession," he said quietly. "It's a declaration." She turned to him, heart thudding. "You don't need anyone, Teyana," he continued. "You built an empire with your own hands. You faced betrayal, grief, and war, and you walked out of it in heels." She laughed softly. "I don't want to own you," he said. "I want to walk beside you." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, not a diamond, but a rare sapphire, deep blue, wrapped in gold filigree, Fierce, elegant, just like her. No media, no spectacle, he said. Just me, asking you to choose me, freely, on your terms. Teyana stared at the ring, then at the man. The first man who didn't try to tame her. The only man who truly saw her. She reached out slowly and closed the box. Raymond blinked, but she smiled. I don't need the ring yet, she said. Not tonight. His lips parted. Oh, but I'll tell you this, she interrupted. You're mine. She stepped closer, her hand cupping his face. And when I'm ready to wear that ring, it'll be because I want a life, not just a legacy. He exhaled, relief washing over him like sunlight. And then she kissed him. Soft at first, then deeply, fully, completely. They returned to Lagos 2 days later, and everything changed. Their relationship, once hidden in shadows, began to blossom in the open. Still private, but no longer secret. They worked side by side. She brought Khalifa Tech into Obi Tech's expansion strategy. He created a division named after her mother. Together they redefined what partnership looked like. Love not built on dependency, but mutual reverence. And when scandals tried to touch her, Teyana didn't flinch. She crushed them, with grace, with fire, with precision. 6 months later, at the launch of the Obi Khalifa Women's Innovation Lab, a journalist asked her, "What made you believe in love again?" She smiled. Not the cold, guarded smile the world knew, but something real. Love didn't save me, she said. It waited until I saved myself. The room went silent, then erupted in applause. That night, in their home, shared now, Teyana stood on the rooftop garden, barefoot, sipping tea. Raymond wrapped his arms around her from behind. I told you once, he whispered into her hair, that I wanted to build something beautiful from what's left. She turned to face him. You didn't just build something, she said. You built me. The morning light filtered through white curtains as the sound of soft waves kissed the shore below. In their private beach villa off the coast of Zanzibar, time moved slower, gentler. Teyana stood on the balcony, wrapped in a silk robe, her belly rounded beneath the fabric, hand resting protectively over it. Her skin glowed, her curls swept into a messy bun, a quiet smile playing on her lips. Below, Raymond stood barefoot in the sand, ankle deep in the tide, his shirt unbuttoned, sleeves rolled. He was skipping stones with the ease of a man who found everything he never dared ask for. She watched him for a long moment, then whispered to the baby inside her, "That's your father, the only man who ever waited without chains, and the only one who ever made me feel like I belonged, without asking me to shrink." A tear rolled down her cheek, not of pain, but of joy so real it trembled. Later they sat on the patio, breakfast spread before them, pineapple, akara, honey-drizzled pancakes. I still can't believe you said yes, Raymond teased, twirling her ring finger gently between his. Teyana arched a brow. It wasn't yes, not at first. He chuckled. You closed the box on me. I'll never forget that. She smirked. Because I needed the world to know I choose on my terms. Always. Raymond kissed her hand, then her wrist, then her forehead. And that's the exact reason I fell for you. 1 year after the summit, Obi Khalifa Technologies was the largest woman-led tech alliance in Africa. The Obi Foundation had launched mentorships in 12 states, and Teyana's Ice Queen nickname retired. She was now known as the woman who built her heart while building her empire. Her portrait, draped in gold silk, holding a tablet in one hand and her child in the other, was featured on the cover of Forbes Africa Women in Leadership. She didn't flinch when they asked her, what does it mean to have it all? She had replied, having it all isn't about wealth or love. It's about owning your voice, loving without losing power, and protecting peace like currency. On the anniversary of Chief Obi's death, she visited his grave alone. She stood in silence, no guards, no press, just a bouquet of sunflowers, his favorite. Thank you, she said softly, placing them gently. For giving me the freedom I didn't understand at the time. For seeing me when others only saw value. For loving me, even when I didn't love myself yet. A warm breeze passed through the cemetery, and for the first time she felt him smile. That night, Raymond found her on their bedroom balcony, staring at the stars. You okay? She nodded. Just thinking about how far I've come. He wrapped his arms around her, his hands resting on her bump. I still remember the first time you looked at me like you wanted to run. She chuckled. I did. And I still stayed. She turned, cupping his face. And that's why I married you. Then she whispered the words she'd never said before, not even at the altar. I love you, completely, with nothing left to protect. He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. And I'll protect that love with everything I have, he whispered back. As dawn broke, she walked the beach barefoot, her silhouette outlined against the pink horizon. Powerful. Pregnant. Peaceful. Teyana Ogidi Khalifa had once been forced into a marriage to save a crumbling empire. Now she ruled one, not because of any man, but because she chose herself first, then chose love second. And for the first time, the world finally saw what Chief Obi had once seen. A queen, not waiting to be crowned, but building her kingdom, brick by brick, on her terms, forever. Dear viewers, what lesson did you take away from this dramatic tale? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.